If it persists to be like this, then I'll turn off my video when I speak.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Shall we begin or do we wait for some more people to join?
Start.
Let's wait for 2 minutes. Many of them are joining. I can see many of them in waiting room.
Yes, sir.
Why are you smiling, Ibrahim?
Same reason you are.
You need to explain that.
ಉದಯ ಪಚ್ಚಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಒಳಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು.
I think we should start. I think we have only 1 hour, right?
Yeah, let's start.
Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're all in good health. So today we're gathered here to be a part of an interactive session that I'm hoping will ignite the fuel of at least some of our careers. The event taking place right now is just a small beginning, but I wholeheartedly believe that there is a long road for our participants and that their journey won't end here. I hope all of the attendees will be able to take away the most of what our guests have to offer us today. But before we begin, I would like to humbly request all the attendees to remain muted throughout the session and to not disturb the decorum of the meeting. And in case you have questions, please drop them in the chat box. We have a wonderful interactive session coming up. Without further ado, I would like to request Hizyam to recite a part of the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful. Ar-Rahman, most gracious. It is He who has taught the Quran. He has created man. He has taught him speech. The sun and the moon follow courses computed, and the herbs and the trees both prostrate in adoration. And the firmament has He raised high, and He has set up the balance, in order that you may not transgress balance. So establish weight with justice, and fall not short in the balance. It is He who has spread out the earth for creatures. Therein is fruit and date palms producing dates. Also corn with leaves and stalk for fodder, and sweet-smelling plants. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? He created man from sounding clay, like unto pottery, and He created jinns from free fire of smoke. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Lord of the two east and Lord of the two west. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Thank you.
Thank you, Iziam. Now I would like to hand this over to Ahmed to welcome the gathering.
Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hey there, my fellow students, professors, and our eminent speakers of the day. I welcome you all to this interactive session on Road to Masters and Jobs in USA. It's organized by Wipro in association with the Nawayaths of North America and FOCI. Now, let me introduce you all to the speakers. We'll start off with Mr. Usman Mullah. He is a senior project manager at PayPal. He did his bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering from Chennai and master's in management information systems from University of Nebraska at Omaha. Proceeding with Mr. Imran Khatheeb. He is working for Wipro as an ETL architect. He completed his bachelor's in ISC in the year 2005 from Anjuman Bhadkal. Also, he is the president of Wipro, who happens to be the organizers of this event. Next in line, we'll be having Mr. Luqman Jukaku. He's currently working as SOC design engineer at Intel. He did his bachelor's in EC from Anjuman and master's in VLSI CAD from Manipal University. And last but not the least, we'll be having Mr. Ibrahim Musba. He's currently working in Apple as software engineer for 6 years. He did his bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering in NIT Karnataka, and he came to US for master's to University of Michigan. Over to you, Aisha.
Thank you, Ruefa. Now I would like to request our HOD to address this meeting.
Good morning, all login participants and resource persons, head of various departments, faculty members, Route to Masters and Jobs in USA, an interactive session organized by Wipro, Nawayath of North America, and FOCI of AITM Bhatkal. This program can do a lot better for students with our esteemed speakers, namely Luqman Jukaku, Imran Khatib, Ibrahim Musba, and Usman Adil. Today, Bachelor of Engineering can not be the end point for students to jobs or anything better in the life. But for that, a master's degree can do a lot better in their life. In this regard, this program can do much more better thing for our students so that a proper guidance can be given to them. At this point, I would like to appreciate the efforts put by Professor Tawab and his team and their involvement. I really appreciate. I also thank FOCI for giving me an opportunity to be the part of this program. I thank everyone and I just request for the proceedings and I don't want to take much time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would now like to request Mr. Adil Usman to share his thoughts with us.
Assalamualaikum. Can you guys hear me? Right. So my name is Usman Adil Mullah. I was born and raised in Chennai. And I've been asked to take 5 minutes to quickly introduce myself and talk a little bit about my journey. So hopefully you all can relate to it, and perhaps you may find yourself, to be on a similar path. To start with, like I said, I was born and raised in Chennai. I did my engineering in ECE. And at that point, ECE was the department to get into. We all didn't know, just like most students here, as to why someone was doing ECE. However, I was lucky towards the end of my engineering to get into Infosys via campus placement. And to me, that was a marquee moment in my life. The reason being, basically, that's where you have to show your skills, actual skills, that an employer is willing to pay for. And that's when you realize you don't have those skills. So when you're put in a position where you have to start actually working to make money, and you have someone, a manager or an employer, above your head, where you have to perform, you start learning really, really quick. And that's a big test for you all. I did pretty well in the bootcamp training, and I was able to, reflect that in my software engineering career. And I did that for about 4 years. And at that point, basically, what happened was I realized that I don't enjoy coding as much. And the reason being, I was okay at it, but I could see, there were other coders and who were natural coders who were really, really good at it and who enjoyed it, right? But that didn't mean that I had to stick with that particular career path. So at this point, and if you guys know anything about the IT industry, the years 2, 3, and 4, when you actually start working in the IT sector, are very pivotal, because this is a point where you see a lot of kids who've come through from engineering colleges, get into IT, who do not have a software engineering background. They start actually branching out, and they figure out people go into MBA, they take the CAT exam. People go to the US, people go to Singapore to do their masters. They basically figure out that coding or software engineering is not their pie. And so I was in the same boat as well. So what I had the opportunity was to learn from all of these different people, right? So I could see if my friends do the CAT. I myself did, and thank God that I didn't do well in the CAT. So at this point, I had a friend who was really into the US, get into the US and let's try to, do a master's. And the reasoning from my perspective to do the master's was I have this coding background and it's not great, I don't love it, but it doesn't mean that experience has to go for waste, right? So there are career paths. So you can still be in the IT industry, but you don't have to code. So the idea was, let's try to talk to people. Let's try to do some research. Let's try to find courses that sort of fit that bill. So that's where a master's in the US with the Department of Management of Information Systems sort of clicked. And I applied to multiple colleges. I got into all of them. And I chose to do my master's in University of Nebraska at Omaha. So the reason I chose this particular college was, for a lot of people getting into the US, especially for higher studies, there's a huge entry barrier in terms of finances. So that was the case for me as well. So you have to have a good understanding of what you can afford And the equation was the amount of money I would spend in India to do my master's, an MBA, or whatever it is. It was possibly going to be lesser for me to do that in the US. I know it sounds absurd, but if you actually do your research, there are always ways where you can figure out how to do your master's in a way that fits the bill for you from a financial perspective. And also the fact that you are studying in the US is a huge deal. So that's how I came to the US. I did my master's, and once I completed my master's, I was lucky to actually find a job that I love so much. A lot of people think that doing jobs are 9 to 5. You go and you do what you're asked for, and then you come back. But for me, that's not the case. You actually go into your job wanting to do well. You think about it after work, and that's the kind of career you want to be in, where you're really passionate about what you do. So hopefully, that's something that you guys might like to do, and we'll always have this conversation, and we can continue. That's all from me for now.
Thank you, sir. I could totally relate to what you said about not wanting to code, even despite having that background. Moving on, I would like to ask Mr. Mohammad Imran to speak a few words.
Good morning, everyone. This is Muhammad Imran Khatib. I work as an ETL architect in Wipro. I have around 14 years of experience. I would like to thank Adil for explaining about his story of doing masters in US. So once you are in US, once you complete your masters, right? So you will have some opportunity to work there as well. They will give some OPT where you can work for 2 years. Okay, once you complete your OPT, then you have to process your H1. So I would like to talk a little bit more on the H1b side. I would like to give a little bit story of mine. So I work for Accenture. I joined there in 2009. And one fine day, I was talking to my manager, and she asked me, "Are you interested to go on site?" And I said, I will let you know. I'll talk to my parents and I'll let you know. And then I said, the next day, I discussed with my parents, and they said yes. Then I told my manager, yes, I'm interested in that. And before that, I never had a dream, or I never expected myself I will be going to US and all. I used to tell my colleagues and all, I just want to go for a week or maybe a month, and I just want to come back. So I never had a desperation or anything to go US. So, and my company started the process, and within a few months, everything went smooth. I landed in US in around 2013. Okay, let's not go into the details, how I came to US. Let's see, how we can, I just want to tell a few more things, how you can go. Okay, I'm Adil said, okay, so going for master is one way. Okay, there are many other ways as well. One, I would like to emphasize more on the H1b side. Let me give brief background of H1b. What exactly is H1b? So it is. I will not take much details. I'm not. I will just give maybe 1 minute. So it is work or employment related visa, and it is for non-immigrants only. It is not immigrant force. It is not for immigrants. Okay, remember that it is for temporary worker basis. So it is basically for company, your company, whichever company you work for, they will apply the petition to US Immigration Department, and it is once it is approved, so you have to go to US Embassy for getting your visa stamped on a passport. So it is not one process. There are two processes. One is a petition, another is visa. Okay, and it is only for some specialized occupation. Okay, so it is not for normal. No, it's not for everyone. There is some specialized occupation, and you have to have that occupation for the qualifying. And you need to have at least bachelor degree or equivalent, something like that. And per year, they have a limit of 65,000 people only. Okay, so, and if there are more than 65,000, okay, it will be through lottery. Okay, so it is through the lottery process. And there are whatever the Adil said, right? So for the masters, and they have a 20,000 plus. Apart from the 65,000, right? 20,000, those 20,000 H1Bs, right? It is for them who do masters in US. Okay, and as I said, he can stay for 6 years. Okay, but they cannot extend more than 6 years. So you have to process the green card. So that is for the that will take long time. It is not like I'm not going to talk in all those details here. I'll just give like in brief. I don't have like I have only like 5 minutes to speak. So, and when you are in H1b, you can change your job as well. And like new employer has to file the same thing. Like they have to file the petition and all. So there is like another visa L1 where we cannot change your job. Okay, just you need to remember this. L1 is different. N1 is like no, it is you have to work for the one company only. It is for the same company, but H1b you can change your job. That is the difference here. Okay, so initially let's come back to something about US, like a little bit like what US is about. Initially, right, like I had like a very bad perception about US, and I'm like I should not say bad perception. I had like not very good perception about US and all. And then like when I went there, it was not really the same. Like it was totally opposite, I can say. Like I noticed like a lot of many good things. I can give like a few examples. Like people used to give like people used to follow like very good disciplines. So when you stand in the queue there, wherever you go and stand in the queue, no one will break the queue. No one will even try to break the queue. And even in the traffic jam, right, no one will ever overtake in the wrong side, or when you're in the traffic jam, no one will ever overtake for you. There is nothing like that. Okay, so I see like a very good discipline in them, and also like they respect each other. So for example, when I landed there, so the first day, I like when I want to go up, I used to take like a lift. So whenever people in the lift, right, first thing, hi, how are you? Like, how are you doing? And when in the middle of the day, they will ask like, how was your day? It's very good. They respect a lot for you. And also in terms of work culture, it is really great. Okay, I would say you will have a very good work-life balance, and you'll really enjoy their working, and you will get a chance to work with the direct client, and you will interact a lot with them, and you will try to understand what exactly they are looking for in terms of when you are in offshore, right, working for software companies. So you won't get that opportunity to directly. I mean, when I say you will call, and I'm you will to have calls and talk to them and all, but not directly. That's what I mean to say. So overall, I see a lot of good things over there as well. And also I would say the quality of life, okay, it is very good actually. I would say without car you cannot survive there. It is kind of you are lame there, without car and all. So you definitely need to have car and all, quality of life, everything is very good, I would say. So let's come back to a topic back on the H1b. So the IT industry, right? I'll just give some brief overview, IT industry in US. Okay, it is very huge. Okay, and I would say even with this, in the past 3-4 years, due to some visa issues and all, still the demand is very huge, and then they need a lot of people, IT professionals. Okay, so and still people they are looking at. Even though I left US 2 years back, I still get the emails on the job related market, what I used to work there. And also US they hold 1/3 of the total IT market in the world. It is 1/3, which is very good. So I will just give talk 1 minute and how can we prepare ourselves. Okay, so I know some people, they cannot afford to go to US for doing the masters and all. Okay, so one way, okay, when you work for IT company, any service company, I would not rather say product-based company. Product-based company opportunities are very less. I'm not telling it is nil and all. It is very less compared to service-based company. Okay, so when I say service-based company, they provide services for companies in US, especially Accenture, Infosys, Wipro, TCS. All those are service-based company. They are mainly into services. So when you work for them, right? So make yourself where whatever you do the work, they should depend on you. Okay, that is when you should try to learn the in and out of the system, the whole system, whatever you work on, and you should make yourself client or whatever job you work more, they should depend on you more, so that they can create an opportunity for you. Okay, so that is one way. Another, like, no, whenever you join, like, no, you have to be like very close to your manager, interact with him, have like set your expectations with them, with your manager. I have like aspiration to go to US. Okay, so you need to, like, no, whenever you have like review sessions with them, with your manager, set your expectations that I have aspiration to go to US. So, and another way, like, I can say, if you interact with the client directly, so you used to have like, the calls in the nights, and also when you interact with them, maintain a very good healthy relationship, and like prove yourself. Like you have like, you can do a lot of things. You can have like, you can share all your good ideas. Okay, and you are learning like new technologies which are emerging in the market, and like, you can apply the new things. Okay, so you have to learn these things, and like, try to impress your client, so that like, they can create like opportunity for you. Like they can, okay, they will say to the higher management, okay, let's bring this guy to onshore. Okay, so another way, so if you don't have the opportunity, okay, this is the last actually. Okay, so the another way, not lost, like this is one of the another way, where if your company doesn't like, process green card or anything, sorry, not green card, H1B, if they don't process, okay, there are like some consultancies who can process for you, but I would not rather like, suggest or anything, but what I have seen, like, with my friends experience, they exploit a lot. They use you like, I mean, like, you need to be very careful in terms of like, finding the right consultancy who can process H1 for you. Okay, so when I say consultancy, right, they are again the company. Okay, so these are like the different ways, like, where how we can go to US through H1B. Okay, there are like many other ways. Like I don't want to go into like a lot of other details and all, since like I have like very few minutes to talk. And yesterday, like, I was talking to my friend Luqman, who is going to be talking, who will be speaking next. He said like, why don't you talk like, something on how can you benefit working in the US and coming back to India. So I came back in 2019, like 2 years back. So he said, and I thought for a while and said, I don't think so. Like, I don't see any benefit. Like, no, I mean, there might be that, but I don't see, I'm like, anything for now I can think of. In fact, I would love to go back and get settled there. But the only concern, what I feel myself, okay, not others' opinion and all, but we have a family here, and like, which is the only thing like which make me not to get settled in US. So, okay, I will not take more time again. Like, I would like to thanks for giving me opportunity, and I would like to give opportunity for others to speak now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. It was very insightful. Our next speaker is Mr. Luqman Jukaku. So please.
Thank you. So Imran Khatib covered almost all the aspects of coming to the US in his 5 minutes talk, and he gave a fairy tale description of the US, and it's not that exactly that fairy tale kind of a life over here, but yeah, I mean, there's opportunities over there, kind of a thing. So as an alumni of Anjuman Engineering College, Anjuman Institute of Technology Management. When we were studying, it was AEC. Now it has changed. So it's my pleasure to address the students from my college back from my side. So if I ask you questions like what most of the students who are working in the first year, second year, third year, or in the final year, so most of the, what are your plans after the engineering, or what is your career perspective, or what is the career path you want to choose? So people who have completed computer science or electronics, they can choose a different path. So if I ask a question like, what is the path you have chosen? So most of you might not have considered or might not have an answer for that. Or some people might be like, after semester, we will take a decision, or after the engineering, when we go to Bangalore, we will make we will take steps forward to it. So don't worry about it. I was also on the same boat. Forget about during the engineering. When I went to Bangalore after engineering, like maybe after a few months also, I was completely clueless what has to be done or how to go about it. I was not at all sure about which career path to take, or my goals are not set. So the point being, what I have to make is like sooner you take a decision or sooner you work towards your goal, it is better. Otherwise, over the period of time, you will realize that time you lost and the lost opportunity because of that, like not taking decision and the bold decision at the correct time, you will realize later on in the point of your life. So coming to my immigration to the US, I never had any plan to come to the US. When when I was like working in India for like different companies, I never had any plan or any goal or anything, any plan set in my mind to go to US at all. So the reason I'm saying, like when I joined one of the company, so as a joining bonus, they had a two offer to me as a joining bonus. You can take a car or you can take a visa to the US. So this is like um, uh, if I look back, it looks like giving it a candy to a kid, or candy versus a stack of cash to the kid. So for sure, the kid will take a candy. He won't realize the worth of the stack of cash. So I'm also in the same boat. I took a car and I realized like, okay, car is the good for me at this moment. And I started enjoying the ride. But I didn't realize what is the opportunity I missed by not taking the visa for the US. But the turning point came into my life when one of my colleagues joined when he was very much keen on going to the US. So the person who joined, he is like a IIT pass out, working in an Nvidia with a very good job, research and development, R&D kind of a job, where it's for the next generation Nvidia graphics card. In that team, he was working. He came to the smaller company just for the US visa purpose. So it's like he is settled in Bangalore with whatever a dream job any person can have, and a dream. He has a home, he has a dream job, he is well settled, but still he want to migrate to the US, which was not, I was not able to digest that part, why he want to leave this kind of a job and go to the US. So, and when I interacted with him more and when I talked to him more, that is the point I realized the foolishness I made by not taking the US path and instead of settling with a candy like a car, and the lost opportunity I made in that point. So I say sitting in this comfort zone, but when I realize the process when I go through what all the process I went through, I now realize that everybody in your life needs someone to guide you or someone to mentor you or someone to give an idea about what opportunity lies somewhere else than what you are doing. So for me, it was my friend who gave me it was my colleague. Because of his encouragement or because interacting with him, I realized that's the opportunity I lost. And when I spoke to, after that, when I worked towards in the same company, when I towards getting into US, that is where I came here. So you need someone to mentor you or guide you or someone to show the path or model to replicate, Adil talked about the model of coming to the US as a master's. So, and Imran said about the H1b path. So these kind of models you can also replicate when you set a goal at this point of your career, whether you are in a first year, second year, or a final year, or you are already completed your engineering. But you set a goal and you try to replicate some of the model by doing the masters or taking up a job which companies can offer the H1 visa or a US visa. So that is what we need to set a goal and work towards it. So looking back to my experience in working in the companies, I have an experience in working in Intel India as well as Intel US. Similarly, Synopsys India as well as Synopsys US, and similarly Synapse, another company. So three of the company which I worked in US, I had worked in the past in the India as well. So I can keep on going on like work culture wise, what all the things, what kind of a work we get to do in the US, or in as a team when we work in the US, who was the decision maker. So those kind of a difference, it makes a lot of difference when you work in the companies where a decision is made, or the company where the new technologies are pushed forward. So you get to learn a lot, or you get to work in the newest technology. So that matters a lot. And when you are working in a product companies, or companies which are working on a newer technology and newer software kind of a thing. So we can get into the details about it later. And so that's all from my side. What I want to take away, what I want you to take away from this point is like you set a goal and what you want to do, whether you want to get into a career in what path, as a master's, or when you want to do a master's, or when you want to get into a job over here. Set a goal and work towards it, and start doing the research in the start doing the research, try to learn more about how to get into it and work towards it. Okay, that's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure listening to your story has revived many of our hopes now, because most of us are in that boat at this point.
I just want to cut you here. So please do not call the sir. So that aspect is that's completely considered as when you are in the US or India, that culture is there, but here calling a sir is like a kind of a, what you say. We don't like to hear that. That's all I want to say.
But my conscience won't let me do that.
You can call by the name.
Okay, I'll try. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. To all the audience, by the way, please feel free to drop in your questions and they'll be answered soon. Now, finally, I would like to request Mr. Ibrahim Musba to share his thoughts with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ibrahim. I would like to start by just giving a brief history about myself, my education, and what my path to the US was. I'll go pretty quickly on this. So I was born and I did my schooling in Saudi in an Indian school, like CBSE syllabus, so not too different than what you guys probably are doing. Then after that, I did my engineering in NITK Surathkal. That's very close to Bhatkal. You probably pass there every time you go to Mangalore. And there I did my electronics and communication engineering 4 years. And then my plan was always, my plan was to go to the US after my bachelor's. And I'll go over the reasons why I wanted to go to the US later. But one of the reasons was I wanted to do master's, and the other reason was basically my brother was also there. So after my master's after my undergraduate in Surathkal, I applied and got admission into master's in University of Michigan, which is one of the better colleges in US and in the world as well. So I did my master's there. And then after that, I through application and actually I was lucky, a recruiter got in touch with me for Apple, and I got a job at Apple from there. So that's kind of my brief kind of overview of how I landed in US. I think the other people like Adil and Luqman, they kind of worked first and got into the US, but for my path was slightly different. I came to the US right after my undergrad. And that's something you might want to consider, especially if you're in your third and final year. If you want to go directly to the US, that's also an option. So the reasons why I came to the US. So I was doing my bachelor's in electronics and communication, and my interest was in robotics and computer vision. If you are not familiar with what computer vision is, you should look it up. It's so that was my interest in robotics and computer vision. And in India, there was no college that kind of had a specialization in that field. That was one of the reasons why US was on top of my mind. And also, the universities in the US are much better. I mean, you can do masters in IIT and other really good universities in India, but the experience and the technologies and the resources in US, I would say, would be much better. So I had actually a choice after my bachelor's. I had a job offer from Nvidia. And if the gamers out there, you probably know what Nvidia is. It makes the GPUs, which was a very good job. I mean, with my background in electronics communication, that might be considered, even like a dream job. Like you get it exactly in your field, you're working. So, but for me, I wanted to go in robotics and computer vision, which is different than going in the hardware, like working on the silicon and on the hardware aspect of it. So many people suggested that I first work in India, get some experience, and then go for masters. But I didn't want to do that because I would be getting experience in a field that I didn't want to continue working in. So that was one of the other reasons I wanted to do my masters first and then start working. Then I want to touch upon why you want to do your masters. If you're not considering doing a masters, I would very strongly urge you to consider, if not in the US, at least in India. And if you think that, but you should definitely consider US as an option. But if for some reason, like there are aspects like not under your control, you cannot do that, but at least in India, because in this day and age, you do need to specialize. If you're not specializing, you won't be able to, I mean, as Professor Anil said, I mean, it's good for you to specialize, and it's going to lead you to better outcomes eventually. I mean, there would be no harm in specializing. I mean, it only can bring benefit. Then the question is why the US and not in India is because the professors you have in the US, the resources in the university you have in the US, the expertise and the cutting edge research that happens in the US does not happen to that extent in India. So you're getting access to people, which is very important, and resources and technologies here in the US. Or, I mean, you don't have to stop. I mean, one thing I would like to take away from this is someone asked a question in the chat, why not Germany? I mean, that's a great option. Like Germany is also a great option. I mean, there are always pros and cons, but if you're going anywhere like where a reliable institution, it is an option that you should consider. I mean, we are talking about the US because we are all here in the US, and there are a lot of pros of coming in the US as well. I mean, their immigration policy, and there's no language barrier, for example, as Adil mentioned. And many of the top colleges in the world is in the US. US is pretty big, and it's a lot of diverse opportunities. So I think I'll stop here because I would want to answer questions. We'd like to have a question answer session and to answer questions specific that you might have. But I guess the main conclusion I would like you to take away is definitely 100% consider doing a master's and specializing in your field. Not in the field what someone would say, okay, do it in machine learning, which is a good option though. But if you don't want to do it in the field that you want to do it. Like as Adil mentioned, you want to end up doing a job that you enjoy doing, and not, just because someone said, electronics communication is good, you went into electronics and communication or, anything. And it's always an option to change your field. As Adil, he didn't want to in something else, that's also an option. And masters is also a good way to do that, because you can take masters in a field that is more closely aligned to what you really want to do. I guess I'd like to end here, and then we can discuss more in the question answer session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I'll hand this over to Mr. Luqman to moderate the questions.
Okay, so we have received a few questions beforehand. So I'll go over each questions and topic relevant to the today's topic. I'll go through those questions as an important first one, and anything other than general we will go later. So first question, what I want to go through, and I would like Usman Adil to answer this. The question is, I come from middle class family. So the first question about the cost, how can we ensure scholarship, and then how do we sustain ourselves in foreign country in the initial days when we have to find dorms or accommodation? Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. This is
That's a great question.
Mohammad, mechanical engineering, second year. Okay, go over, Adil.
That's a great question, and it's a very important one, right? Because, like I said, it's one of the biggest entry barriers to come into the US, the finances. In fact, it's an entry barrier even in India nowadays, given that masters cost upwards of 15, 20 lakhs if you want to do an MBA in a good school. So what the first thing you have to think about is, what can you afford? How much money do you have? And that's where you have to start planning. Do you have that money? Are your parents capable of getting something that, that amount for you? Do you have your relatives who can help? Do you have a loan that you can avail? Or, do you want to actually do a job and save up for the money? So you have to have a basic amount that will be required saved up. Let's say how much let's say you want to understand how much is it going to take, right? That's where the research kicks in. Now, when you want to buy a bike or a phone or a scooter, you go and research, right? You go and look up how much it costs. It's the same with college. So I would say the way you want to start researching colleges would be based on the course first. What do you want to do, right? And why do you want to do it? Are you wanting to come here for research? Are you wanting to come here to just get a master's degree so you can get a job? And if so, then you have to, do a pros and cons thing, right? So where is this college located? What is the course? What is the previous history? Are there students who have come here? Have they gotten scholarships before? And if so, what is the amount of the scholarship? How easy is it to get? Now, all of this information is available online. There are forums where students hang out and actually help. When I came in 2012, right? So when I came in 2012, this forum used to be called EduLix. It perhaps is relevant today, perhaps not, but there should be a similar forum. Nowadays, you have Facebook. Every college has a Facebook community of students, especially Desi students. This is like Indian students who have come here and are studying, who you can reach out to and understand what the costs are like, right? And the answer is not going to be a singular answer, but I can say it's going to cost you 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs. That's never the case, right? Depending on which college you go to, which city you go to, what sort of course it is. Are you doing a master's? Are you doing a PhD? The costs vary. And what I would recommend is if you want to get into the US and you've decided that, you want to do your master's, then start getting in touch with us directly. And we can walk you guys through the actual steps. And when it comes to the point of, how do you get your finances ready, we can have that discussion. That is something that you don't have to worry about. Like, for example, myself, I did not have a lot of money when I came to the US to do my master's, okay? I came in with around 10 lakh rupees, but I managed. I had scholarships, I worked, and the reason I could manage was because I knew what I was getting into. Now, that being said, if I went to the college that Ibrahim went to, I wouldn't have managed. That college is a little more expensive, So you have to make that conscious choice before you get into something. And when you guys are going to be 21, 22 years old. So as you mature and as you grow, you have to make those decisions for yourself. You no longer have parents to handhold you, right? And that's where that maturity kicks in. And we are here to help. So anytime you have questions that get into that, talk to us and we're here to help you out. Hopefully that helped.
So this was similar question on this side, like looking at the fee structure for masters in USA, is there any way we can apply for a full or partial scholarship? I hope you answered this. Do you want to add anything more to it, or?
Yeah. So the way the US university system is set up, and this is something you guys should know, you have the concept of state universities, where every state, US has about 40, 50 states now, I think. And every state, most states have public universities. When I say public universities, they're funded by tax-paying dollars. So what that means is those universities are heavily subsidized. It doesn't mean that those universities have a lower level of education, but there are public universities that are really, really good. But the public universities in general cost significantly lower than private universities. So well, you have to do your research and figure out which public university you want to go into. And then these public universities have many branches in different cities. So you have to figure out what the cost of living is in those cities, right? And where the courses are being offered in those city branches. So once you have narrowed it down, you get to a list of like 4 or 5 colleges that you want to get into. And that's where you realize, okay, these are the colleges, this is the amount. And then you actually start applying for scholarships. Every college has scholarship. Apart from scholarships, colleges have the concept of research assistantship, teaching assistantship, graduate assistantship. Basically, these are all free tickets. And they're, given that they're free tickets, they're not going to be in huge numbers. Typically in a class of 30 or 40, 5 people get it, right? But it doesn't mean, people don't get it. So you have to apply, you have to be proactive, you have to know what you're doing, you have to research, you have to talk to a lot of people, and then hopefully you get it. And once you get it, your path becomes so much easier.
Okay, so next question is, can you please stress on the journey from completing graduation to getting admission in an university in US? So I think Ibrahim can answer this.
Yes, that's a good question. So I can tell you kind of like on timeline wise what it looks like and what are the steps you should be doing. And if you have questions about anything in specific, you can ask a follow-up question. So if you want to go do masters right after your bachelor's and take admission immediately, if you're in your final year, it's a bit late. You should be thinking from the middle of your third year. And if you're in your final year, don't give up hope. You can still apply, but you're going to get in the next year. So you'll have to probably work for a year or prepare yourself. But if you want to go immediately, you have to start thinking from the middle of your third year, where you have to start looking up universities, where you want to go. You want to look at their timelines. For example, I'll take Adil went to University of Nebraska. You need to go to their website. You need to see, when are the application deadlines for the fall semester. Usually there are like 2 or 3, mainly 2 kind of times where you can enter. That's in the fall or spring. Fall means in September. That's where most of the colleges start their academic year. That's September. So if September is, the college starting, 12 to 15 months before that date, you need to go to the college's website, look at, what their application procedure looks like, what their deadlines are, what you need. You have to take some exams, the Gre and Toefl, and they're not very difficult exams. You prepare for it and you can do pretty well in them. So then, you kind of shortlist your colleges, start applying for your exams. You have a lot of centers in the exams. You pick a date and apply, and you want to make sure that your results of your exams come a good amount before the final deadline. For example, I'll throw some random months here, like just say, May is the deadline for, the college application for enrollment in September. You want your Gre and Toefl results to come a little bit before that, right? At least a month or 2 before that. And even more, if you're not happy, if you do it much in advance, and if you're not happy with your score, you can give it again. So it's not a problem. Just say the first time you're not prepared enough. You can give it again, you can get a better score, and you can apply with those better scores. So look at the shortlist your universities, look at their timelines, and of course, as Adil mentioned, you have to kind of decide where you want to go, right? You have to look at the cost of education and like the university, the programs that they have, and everything. But that's just a whole separate discussion. You look at the universities, you start giving your apply for your Gre and Toefl. Those are the main 2. But I guess if you want to go for the MBA or other things, there are other exams like MCAT. But if you're for engineering, it's going to be Gre and Toefl. Toefl is an English exam, and Gre is like a maths, English, and I don't remember the third one. Maths, English, and something. You give those exams and you give your application. And application is a whole another topic. You have to some applications might have essays. You have to give like a statement of purpose, like a small, like a one-page statement of purpose, like why you want to go to that university. You have to get recommendation letters and so on and so forth. But if you have specific questions of that, you can give a follow-up. But the main takeaway is you have to start early. And if you're still in your final year and you want to go to the US, don't worry, you still can start, but start looking immediately, like right for the next year, because you might not make it this time, but for next year, what are the deadlines and what the application procedure looks like. Hope that answers your question.
Okay. So coming back to the next question. So I think that some of the questions are answered in the chat itself. I want to be answer this in the voiceover here as well, so that everybody can benefit who are not seeing the chat. So I want to answer this question by Adil. What makes a master degree in USA better than the master degree in Germany, considering Germany has a free education versus USA is known to have a student with a high college debt?
So you have to basically, like, something that would help you make that decision is a pros and cons list, right? There is no straight answer. I'm sure you can argue both ways. For someone who's doing mechanical engineering, and if they can find a really, really good course in a Germany university, then the argument is going to be in the favor of the German university, right? It's probably not going to be in the favor of the US, given that finding jobs that are not in the IT sector are not easy. It's not that it's not doable, it's not easy. So that's something to consider. But however, let's say, you are in IT or you are in an allied field like EC or something, and you know that you want to get into machine learning, software engineering, product management, or all of these courses that US is known for, then US is the known tech leader in the world. And especially the fact that once you graduate, you have all of these systems that help you get a job and allow you to stay in the country and then have that lifestyle. It's a great option from my perspective. Now, I've had friends who've gone to Germany, and the weather, the language barrier has always been a huge, deterrent. However, like I said, it depends. If you feel that the course is worth it, and you have people that know about what the degree entails, then go for it.
Okay. So some of the questions are regarding the doing part-time job while doing masters over here. And is it okay to work during masters? So yeah, one of you can answer, Adil or Ibrahim.
I'll take a shot at it. So yes, you are legally allowed to work 20 hours a week, every week, while you're doing a master's. So what that means is you cannot just go and do a job anywhere. You have to work within the university. A lot of Desi students, what they do is, apart from doing these legal jobs, depending on the college, depending on the city that you're in, they also go and help out other Desi people, community. They do different jobs and make money on the side. Now, I'm not condoning it, but that's something that people do. But the bottom line being, if you're able to manage the workload, which is if you have a heavy course, right? And do not think of a US master's degree similar to your engineering, where you have your course, you have your lectures, and then you have an exam end of the month or end of the semester. And that determines whether you pass or fail. The US doesn't work that way. You have tests and you have papers and you have submissions every week, and all of that adds up. And the end result or the culmination of those tests and how you do over that period of semester is what determines whether you pass or fail. So what that means is you have to keep up with what's happening as part of your course. You have to consistently perform well. And if your work interferes with that, then I would suggest not to work, because you are in the country because you want to study, right? And if you're not doing well, if you fail out, then there are chances of you getting kicked out. However, if you're able to manage, then there's always opportunities that allow you to sustain yourself, at least from a living expenses standpoint. There's always ways and means to do it. And those are things that you sort of can get into and we can explain on a one-on-one basis, as and when you get to the you get closer to let's say which university you want to get into, which city you want to get into, what course you want to study. We can walk you guys through to how how that's going to work. Hopefully that helps.
Okay.
Ibrahim, you wanted to add anything to that, perhaps from your experience?
No, that's a good summary. I guess you'd only want to do work to kind of support and not to earn extra, basically, right? I mean, you don't want the work to interfere with your studies, as Adil mentioned. But if you for living expenses, if you have to work, that's but it shouldn't be interfering with your studies. That's what I would like to ask.
So the one caller that I'd like to add is the possibilities are endless, right? There is no set thing that says, hey, this is what you have to do, and that is it. You cannot stray away from it. So you are the best judge of your capabilities and how much you can push yourself. So what I would say is, do not think about and worry about those things. If you know your capability and if you know how much you can push yourself, the possibilities are endless. And once you come here, all of those become really, really apparent.
One thing I would like to add, I mean, we're talking about masters, but you should also consider like a PhD. And the good thing with a PhD is almost free for the most part. Your masters are covered. You get a stipend as well. So that's also something you should consider. Masters is good, but PhD is better. A little bit, maybe sometimes more difficult to get into. But if you get into a PhD, they're not only covering your fees in most of the colleges, at least, but they're also giving you a stipend. So you're actually almost like earning money in that case in most of the colleges. So something to keep in mind.
That's a very, very, very good point. So a master's typically takes a year and a half, 2 years, depending on the course. A PhD typically takes, apart from your master's, an additional 3 years. Now you could do it faster, you could probably elongate it. But the critical point there is most colleges, when you're doing a PhD, you are in a self-sustaining mode, which means you have work, you're getting paid, and you're saving money, and your studies are literally free. So if that is something, if you have that 5-year window that you can invest in yourself in a PhD, then the PhD is possibly the best route that you can have, especially if you have, financial entry barrier.
So I want to add to this.
Go ahead.
So the financial sustenance, but with the PhD, the what we are talking about is like you can sustain with your family, plus you can send back money to India as well. So that kind of a financial sustenance you get with a PhD. So how I know is when my brother-in-law was trying to come here for master, most of the people were suggesting him to apply for the PhD instead of masters. So the PhD path is the one you can always shoot for. And in that 5 years, you are not losing the 5 years, you are earning as well as you are learning. So that is something you need to consider with the PhD.
Just one quick addition. You might think a PhD is something maybe you want or not want to do. There is also an option to come here once you get your master's and you come here to apply for the PhD. But it's always better if you get it before, but it's still an option. So, as Adil said, possibilities are endless. You can get your PhD before, admission before, or you can come here and then apply for a PhD as well. So both are valid options.
Okay, so next question, I'll take this up. How can we search for opportunity in USA from India? So I would like to, go back to what Imran has went in detail. But so if you want to come to US, you have to have a visa sponsorship. So visa sponsorship comes from an employer. So an employer has to sponsor you a visa, then only you can come here. So you cannot directly apply for a job. First, you have to have a job, and then only you will get a visa, and you can come to US. So for that, the route for the coming to US via the job is you have to be working in a company in India, and those companies is what is will sponsor you to come to US. So there are visas like H1, L1, all those kind of a different terminology visas. So you can come in those visa, but those visa has to be sponsored by an employer. So you cannot directly get a job in USA and those companies are sponsoring you visa. It's very rare. I don't say it's not possible, but the known route is working in India and then coming to the US through those employer. Hope that answers. So there are more questions related to MBA, finance, and all those related. So I want to take up all these questions together, and Usman Adil can answer those questions up. So how easy it is to find a job with an MBA degree? What skills are required for an MBA graduate? What are the various finance department where being in finance specialization student can work? And yeah, all those finance and MBA related questions. So Adil, can you answer those things?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So I want to distinguish between two things. If you've done your MBA in India or wherever outside the US, and your goal is to find a job in a career path that is aligned with an MBA, the best way to do that is to get into a company that, for example, an IT services company. There are a lot of jobs that require an MBA. You could get into the big four consulting companies in India, like PwC, EY. A lot of these companies hire MBA grads to do a lot of consulting. You can get into Deloitte. You can get into a lot of the IT services company like Infosys, etc. Basically, once you are in these companies, then there are opportunities once you're in these companies where they will sponsor you to come to the US. So that's one way to go about it if you already have an MBA. Now, the second way to go about it is for you to come and do your MBA here. Now, for you to come and do an MBA in the US, it's very expensive. MBA is something that white people are really good at, to put it really, really crudely. Okay. Now, the reason Luqman, I, Imran, Ibrahim, we all exist and we have work visas and we are able to, sustain ourselves is because in the US, there's a dearth meaning, you do not have enough technology resources or employees who are skilled enough. That is where we come in and we fill in that gap. That's not the case. In fact, it's completely opposite in the case of MBA. You have an excess of talent here who are really, really good at it. So obviously, from an employer standpoint, their preference is to hire someone local. And that's what we see, or that's what my experience has been. I've had friends who have come here, spent thousands of dollars doing an MBA, and they couldn't find a job, and they had to go back. So that's so much money that you've literally wasted. Now, that being said, I'm not saying you cannot find a job. It all depends on you. The possibilities are endless. If you're good enough, if you have the requisite skills, then it's up to you to find a job. But it's not easy. It's difficult. That's something which you have to be aware of.
Okay, next question. It is a direct question to Ibrahim Musba, and a follow-up question with that also. How is your experience working in Apple? And is it okay to share which technology you're working on? And assuming you're working on a image processing technology in Apple. So I think Ibrahim can elaborate on that.
Yeah, I posted some things on the chat. I don't want to take too much time on this because it doesn't directly, concern like the job, like the path of masters, which we're more focused on. But just a brief, I work on Apple Maps, and basically I work on the team that processes all the data that comes from our cars that collect data all over the US. So we have cars driving around the US and other parts of the world that has image, like a lot of cameras, lidar sensors, GPS, and we process all that data for the creation of the map. So basically, we kind of create the map from scratch. And the Apple Maps team is a very big team. It's almost the size of a small average size company. It's like upwards of thousands of people just working on the maps, and we're just a small part of it. Hope that answers your question.
I think you should say them, give an example of Google Maps. Most of them would not know about Apple Maps.
Yeah. So yeah, you probably know about Google Maps. Living in India, I don't think we have that much good coverage in India. But yeah.
Okay, so next question is how difficult is to deviate from one's current field and pursue masters in another field? I think question should be how easy to deviate from one's current field and pursue. So I mean the questions are related to master. Usman or Ibrahim can answer.
I'll take a stab at it. So the answer always, there's never a right or a wrong answer, right? It's always a lot of gray, and that's how life is. So that being said, it depends on the deviation. You know, are you deviating from engineering to become a doctor? That's tough. I'm not saying it's not possible. That's very tough, right? Are you deviating from a math grad to, getting into IT? Very possible. A lot of math is used here, and math grads make the most money as an engineer in the US. So it depends on the deviation. What I would recommend is talk to us offline and get in touch with us, and so we can, sort of do it on a one-on-one basis. And one thing to keep in mind is research anything that you want to do. Like nowadays, everything is at our fingertips. You have Google. There's always someone that has done what you're wanting to do before. Always. There are forums that have people who are willing to, share their knowledge, share their learnings. The learning that you should remember is seek and you will find, for sure. So you just have to put some time and effort into it. So reach out to us and we can possibly help you out.
Yeah, that's a great answer by Adil. I just would like to add a few more things to it based on my experience. I didn't touch on this before, but since this question came up. So in my field, so basically I did my bachelor's in electronics and communication. And computer vision robotics is mainly a computer science field, which is like, it's related, but totally different. When you're working on software, like hardware, like computer chips, like I got a job in Nvidia, for example. And if you're like, currently I'm a programmer, I'm a software engineer. So that was in a way a switch of fields, and it's going to depend. It's going to depend on what you are and what you want to change to. But I would like to just to say that it's possible. I would like to give my experience. Is I took so University of Michigan, in their electrical engineering, which we call electronics and communication, it's called electrical engineering. Electrical engineering had a specialization in robotics and computer vision. It was a minor and not a major. So I took my major in control systems and took my minor in robotics and computer vision. But what I did was, on paper, my major was control systems, but I took the minimum required in control systems, but then all the rest of the courses, I took what I wanted to take. So that's how I did the shift. And at the end of the day, when an employer comes towards you, he doesn't care what your major or minor is. He just cares about what do you know, what you're good at, and what experience you have. So at the end, I could make this switch from like an electronics background to this computer vision, machine learning, which is more of like a software development background, through just exploiting like the way the course structure is set up. I took my minimum required for control systems, and what I did was the control systems courses which I took which are most closely resembling to what I really want to do, and that's how I kind of made the shift. But as Adil said, you should look on the internet. Like, people probably have done something that you want to do, and if you have any specific questions, you can reach out to us.
So there were the MBA specific question. I am not sure whether Adil you answered this. The question is like a career perspective in corporate world with an MBA. So hope you answered it already, Adil.
If you have a specific question, can you call it out?
The question is, can you enlighten us on the corporate career of the MBA in US?
Okay. Typically, how do I put it? So most MBA grads, MBA is a business degree, right? And Asad mentioned a very important point here. That's something that you'll have to know. In the US, the way MBA is, most, like the big colleges, Harvard and Yale and UPenn, etc., the way they operate is networking is a big component of MBA. What that means is the relationships that you make, the people that you meet as part of your MBA, most often than not, it persists through your life and helps you in your career going forward. Most MBA grads, I think MBA is a very vast field that is very diverse, and MBA grads can go into anything. They could become managers in a company like PayPal, in a company like Apple. They could become product managers. They could go into consulting in consulting firms like PwC, EY, Deloitte, etc. They could get into technology if they wanted to. They could go, start a startup if they wanted to. So the possibilities are endless for MBA grads. However, you're sort of like charting your own path. Yeah, I think that's what it is. If you guys are really interested, then reach out to us and possibly get you in touch with people who have done MBA here, who would possibly, probably be better suited to answer than me, who hasn't done an MBA.
Yeah, that makes sense. We should have an MBA in the panelists next time when we get into this. So there was a question related to startup and starting a company in the foreign. Specifically, I assume this question is foreign means USA. So if we want to go for a small startup company in foreign, or what can we do to start a own startup in foreign? Can you highlight it on it before we get in touch with the people offline? So none of us. Okay, Ibrahim.
I mean, I can give it a shot. Like starting, the aim to start your own company is, you go for it. But if you wanted to start directly, start a company in the US, that's very difficult. One way is to come through masters, or I think the best way is to come through a master's. You do your master's here, you come here, you start working, but it's still a very long path because you cannot start your own company on an H1b visa. I think you need to be at least holding a green card, which might take a long time, depending on where you're coming from. So there is no easy answer. I know someone who had a startup in India, and I don't know what path he took to come to the US, but I can try to find out. But yeah, you need a green card. And one of the ways is to come through masters, to get your H1B, get the green card. But if you're born in India, that's going to be a very long process. There are shortcuts, which we can mention later, but in general, it's a long process.
I think with lots of money, if you can invest and come an EB5 visa. That's a different path.
Yeah, 0.5 million you need.
Yeah, so here's the thing though. If your startup idea is in technology, then I don't see why you would do it in the US. India is the best market for startups now. That's where all of the investing is happening. People from US are scampering to go invest in India. Just my 2 cents, I guess.
That's a very good point. I think, it's actually in a way easier in the idea wise to get a startup in India, because you have models that that have been proven in the US, but does not have an equivalency in India. And it's going to be challenging, but at least we know that it works somewhere.
So the only thing I'd like to call out there, if you have a really, really good idea, and if you're having trouble sort of, getting kickstarted, that's where you have to network and start leveraging other people who may have experience in that. So for example, I have a friend whose brother is an angel investor in Mumbai. So if you have a great idea, then that is something that we can get you in touch with, right? So that's just me. There are so many other people who have contacts. So the more you network, the more better it's going to be from a startup perspective.
Can I add one point?
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, the way how it works, right? Like they have like a onshore offshore model. So most of the work, right? Someone was talking about digital marketing, like all this work, right? They used to get it done from offshore. Okay, so some company will be there. Like if you want to, I would say like if you want to start a company, start it over here, and you need to have like the good contacts over there. You need international not international. Basically, like you need to have like what Adil was saying, good connections. What I would rather say. So that will help. Better to start it here, and then we can think of
Okay. So there was another question related to master. What do you suggest, master directly after engineering or after some experience in the industry? I think this we answered similar question, right? Or anybody want to add on this? Ibrahim?
Yeah, I mean, both are very valid paths. If you have a good offer in the field that you want to work in India, go for it. Work and then apply for masters. It in a way it might even give you access to better universities and potentially better scholarships when you come here with experience. But in my case, I had an offer in a job that was not related to what I wanted to continue. So for me, in my circumstance, I thought it was better to go for masters directly, and it worked out for me. So both are valid options, and it depends on your situation and your circumstances.
And what I'd like to add to that is, that's a good call out, Ibrahim, is see, if you don't have the money, then you have to make money to come here, right? You need at least like 5 or 6 lakhs. So you have to have a job. Now, let's say the money is out of the equation. The other thing that work experience helps is the fact that once you have come here, you've done your master's, and then you're applying, if your previous experience was in a related field, that helps a lot. Why? Because you're not starting afresh. And when you're attending those interviews, you have something to show for yourself as opposed to, nothing on your resume. So that definitely helps. It gives you a lot of confidence in when you're attending interviews and you're, going for job interviews and whatnot. So having that work experience, from my perspective, is probably the better way to do it, as opposed to coming directly from engineering. And the reason I say that is because most of us are spoon-fed in India. If you've lived in India, then your parents have taken care of you all the way up to engineering, and you've done engineering because people have asked you to do engineering. There is very few people who have done engineering because you wanted to do engineering. I think that's the case. So having said that, you really don't have a clue of how the world works. You probably have never had a job in your life. So your maturity level is not going to be at what it would be from versus compared to someone who's had that job. And that was the case for me, at least, and I'm being honest here. And that was the case, I think, for my friends as well. So me getting that 4-year experience really made me understand what I liked, what I didn't like, what I wanted to do, right? And that put me on a path that I think has been good enough for me. So hopefully that's something that you guys can learn from. And it's not to say that coming masters directly is bad. It depends on who you are and what your interests are. If that's something that fits your bill, then always go ahead.
Okay, as Adil mentioned about the parents, there's one specific question related to parent. How did they end up convincing the parents to study abroad? So take a shot at it, Adil.
Luckily, I didn't have to convince my parents. I was born and raised in Chennai, and my parents have always been open about things. Now, one thing that I didn't mention or I forgot was, before I applied for my master's to the US, I actually had a H1b. I just didn't go for the consulate, which means I was going, even if I didn't come to the US for my master's, I would have come to the US as probably how Luqman did or Imran did on an H1b visa. And the reason I explicitly chose to do my master's and not go the H1b route was because I knew that if I continued on that route, I would have been a developer for probably the rest of my life. I would have been so entrenched in that field that it would have been hard for me to get out of it. So I made a very conscious choice and a bold and difficult choice at that point. where I decided, I have to take a step back, and I think that doing this master's is possibly going to put me on a path that I want to be on. And I was lucky as well, but eventually that worked out for me. Now, from a parent's perspective, it's something that you'll have to learn. It's a very essential skill. Is you have to be able to argue for yourself, and you have to present points that make your case. And this is going to be the case in every endeavor that you take in your life, right? So if you have points that prove out to your parents that, why are you concerned? Are you concerned from a money perspective? Then this is how I'm going to take care of the money. Are you concerned that there are no masjids in the US city? Then that's not the case. There are masjids. Are you concerned that, I'm not going to be praying? Then how are you going to know if I'm praying when I'm in Mangalore when you're not around, right? So those are all conversations you have to have very openly with your parents and basically convince. I assume it's going to be easier for boys rather than girls. It's a difficult conversation, and you have to learn, and you know your parents well. So you have to have that conversation and learn to make your case. And we can definitely help to provide a perspective of how it works in the US. A lot of parents, a lot of people are ignorant, right, about how things work. They basically see what the media says about the US, and they might have a negative opinion of the US, which, it depends. There are always perspectives. There's black, white, and there's gray. So Islam tells us to go seek knowledge, right? So your job is to go seek the answers that help convince you put on a path that you want to be on. That's my sort of like elaborate answer on that.
Okay, so there's a specific question on PhD from Mubarak. He's currently working in UAE. So I'm looking for PhD. What do you suggest, keeping in mind I need to meet expenses of my family too? So the path will be similar to the master's, right? So Ibrahim or Abdul.
Most colleges that you apply to, if you know the field of your research, then you'll start picking out the colleges. Now, once you see those colleges, you will see that the way the PhD is structured is you first come here, do your master's, and then you complete, you start on your research with a professor on your chosen field, and you get your PhD degree. So most PhD students who have applied, they sort of apply, they call it a dual course, or dual intention, right? Where you're saying upfront, I'm going to do my master's, but I'm going to follow it up with a PhD. So what ends up happening is those colleges provide you with research assistantships. That's what it's called, RA. And what that means is when you land in when you land in the US, you already have a job at hand in the university that pays you a monthly stipend, which helps you sustain yourself from a living expenses standpoint. Not only that, it also pays you for your tuition fee, right? So that way you're not paying anything from your pocket. Now, that's it. Most colleges do that. So you have to do your research in finding that out. Now, it all depends on how much money you need to sustain your family. If you're going to say you need 10 lakhs because you have medical bills, then probably not the case. If it's a regular family and you need to have regular bills, then that's probably doable. So what I would recommend is narrow down the colleges, narrow down the courses based on this college, narrow down the college based on the courses, figure out what the expenses are, try to find desi people who actually have done that course on Edulix, and there are other sites, there's Facebook. And that will give you a good idea of what your expenses are going to be. And then when you apply for that PhD, you'll know that you're going to get the RA or not. Most colleges give those sort of positions even before you come to the US. So if that's the case, you're able to make that decision even before you land in the US, right? But everything is sorted out. There could be a possibility where that's not sorted out, and that's a gamble that you'll have to take, and that's a bridge that you can cross when you're at that point. Hopefully that answered.
Okay. So there are many questions related to the programming languages, web development. So I think those questions we can take offline. So I just want to take two more questions. One is specific to Gre and Toefl exams. So somebody wants to know about these exams. And so another question is from now on, how can we prepare for it, and how much should we have to opt for it? So maybe the question is he's in third year, so how can he want to plan for it? How can he plan, and how much maybe he's expecting, how much money maybe in that case, or how much effort? So these two questions together, can Ibrahim answer?
Yeah, I mean, for the GRE and TOEFL, there is thousands of people have done it. So a quick Google search will let you know exactly what it takes to crack these exams, and it's not too difficult. So you have books that you get in India, very very popular. I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but they're just GRE preparation book. You take the book, you study, go through the book, you give the exam. It's as simple as that. And the level of math in those exams, like for the GRE, is not something that's very difficult. I mean, if you have done your engineering, I think it's sufficient. You just need to probably touch up on some basics. English is maybe a different story. You might have to work on it a little bit more. That was like the problematic point for me as well. It was the English to score. I scored pretty decent, but I mean, you probably need to work, especially the essay writing is where I found a lot of issue with. And for that, you need to practice. You need to read, in those books, you have example essays, for example, and you have to practice basically. But it doesn't take much, and it's pretty easy to crack those exams.
And I'll add a couple of pointers that work for me and work for my wife as well. So to me, the best way to prepare for GRE is to start taking sample tests. You have a lot of sites, and that's the best way to judge where you stand, right? So before, what I would recommend is, if you're serious about this, immediately go and take a GRE test on any of the sites. There's Kaplan, there's Manhattan GRE, and there's so many sites that allow you to take a sample test. It's basically exactly the same as a real GRE is going to be. The questions are very similar, and the score that that you get on that test will tell you where you stand. So that tells you what the delta is between where you want to be. So that way you can start preparing. If you know that you scored really well in math, and that's not something you have to concentrate or put a lot of focus on, right? You could keep that towards the end and concentrate on English. If you scored really well on English, then you know that math is something that you have to really work hard on. And the reason being, and what I want you guys to do is take a test every day, take a test, at least like a week if possible. And 3 weeks is more than enough to ace the GRE. If you're a decent student who gets 80% in India, and you are decently performing in math, then English is going to be your biggest obstacle that you'll have to cross over. And if that's something that you can ace, then you should target a GRE score of at least 320. The higher a score is, the better, easier it is for you to get into decent. A lot of colleges do not select based on just GRE. It doesn't work like that in the US. In India, you have an entrance exam, you have a score, and that dictates what college you get into, right? Especially if you're getting through the regular government quota. In the US, it's always your profile. Who are you? Where are you from? What is your background? What have you done so far? Why is it that you're wanting to take this course? What is your GRE score? And the GRE score is a very small but significant component of your profile. Hopefully that adds a little more color to that topic.
Okay, so it's already past 30 minutes, past our time. So I just want to take this last question, and a remaining question we can take it up offline or send it across. So the last question will in the chat, which came education system in US versus say India. So can someone elaborate on that?
It's different, right? The way the education system is set up, it's very different. It depends on what level you're wanting to compare it. At a school level, a lot of India is based upon rote or memory-based learning, where your exams are trying to test you based on how much you can, memorize and how best you can replicate that in an exam. Now, I know that India is sort of trying to move away from that. In the US, like I said, you're judged based on a continuing basis, right? Where it's not just the final exam, rather a series of tests and papers that you have to write. There's a lot of writing, there's a lot of essay writing here. And anytime you come to and this is something that you'll also, encounter when you apply to a college in the US, you'll have to write a statement of purpose. A statement of purpose is an essay, which is at least 2 or 3 pages, where basically you explain why you want to do that particular degree in that particular college. It seems easy, but it's not easy. It is very difficult. And the reason being, we've never been trained to put our thoughts. right? And what the US expects is, what is your thought? What is your understanding of something? Just because the textbook says this doesn't mean you agree with it, right? You always have to make a case. And anytime in the US you're presenting or submitting a research paper, that's what you mostly do in masters, is you write papers. Your papers always have to be based on your understanding of what that is. And it could be in line with what the text says. It could be, it could be significantly astray from what the text says. But you have to make your case and you have to be original. In India, a lot of us, I used to be in the same boat. We call cheating as copying. In the US, it's a big issue. It's considered unethical, and it is enough grounds for you to be dismissed from a college. You cannot copy someone else's work. I know we say copy, but it's actually considered cheating. And cheating is unethical. It's amoral. It's something that is very hard for kids to get used to. It's something that is very important. So in that way, the US system is very different because you have to think a lot. You have to put in an effort on a continuous basis, and you have to keep performing, and you will get the hang of it once you guys are here. And the second point that I was mentioning in the chat was the way the universities, especially at a master's and a PhD level, operate. Like I said, in public universities are funded by tax dollars. Tax dollars are people like me and you who work here and make money here, paid the government, right? Apart from this, universities also have tie-ups with a lot of the local businesses and local institutions that are in the city and state. And those businesses always have problems that need to be solved. So a lot of the times what happens is they will have tie-ups with the universities where they will fund research to help figure out a solution for that problem. And what that means is, let's say you're a business, and just like a simple example, you're a business that is finding it really hard to find, customers to come back and re-engage with their product. And the business is not able to make any headway. And it's a very particular or peculiar problem that is isolated to that particular region. So that business could employ your university's MBA, wing or whatever, and say, I'm going to give you guys $100,000 or $500,000. Try to figure out a solution for this problem. So what that means is, as a student, you're actually working on solving a real life problem that impacts an industry. And what the research that you do, the culmination of that work actually helps solve a real life problem. That is something that you rarely see in India, possibly in the IITs and NITs. But this is something that you see as the norm in the US. Hopefully that gives you a decent idea. Anything to add, Ibrahim, possibly from your perspective?
No, I would just like to add, the university is not just the course, or it's the students, the professor, the resources, and everything that goes around it. And in general, at each of these stage, the US university is going to be better than a university in India. I mean, it's going to have better resources because they have better money, more money from the government, from from these partnerships with the industry. They're going to have cutting edge resources. They're going to have better labs. They have better professors. I mean, these professors, most of them in these good universities, are top of the line in the world, not only in that university or in the US. They're like some of these researchers have basically they're top of the world in their field, right? And you're working with these people and the students that that are also basically coming from all over the world here. So it's there's many aspects and many facets to why a university in the US is better. The professor is better, the university is better, the diversity of students is better, the culture, everything.
So I'd like to add on the job perspective side of it. So when we interview a candidate who have done the masters from the US versus the candidate who have an experience in the working field, so they're always a better better candidate who has done a master's. When it comes to the people who has done masters in the US, the problem solving skills of them, algorithm skills and interview preparation, the way they do, all those things a lot matters, and the preparation they do and come back. It's all depends on the what they have learned in the masters over here that helps them solving those problems, and those coding skills comes from them. So that adds a lot of value when you are interviewing, even after 10 years of your experience. The experience you get from the masters add a lot value to it. So with this, I would like to end this question answer session. We have a lot more questions which are not answered. We can answer them offline, and there are a lot more questions coming up. You guys can connect with us. You guys can shoot a question to us directly. And the specific questions like which stream I want to take, if we want to connect with somebody in the PhD stream, or somebody in the different like chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, you guys can connect to any one of us, and we can connect you to the right people, and they can guide you in the right direction, and they will be able to help you choosing the universities, or uh, uh, help you in making the decision. So with that, I would like to give back to the host. Thank you.
Yeah, a big thank you to all the speakers for giving us their time. Jazakallah. I hope that everyone who attended this today will be taking away at least a little something from this session. And I'll hand this over now to Akif to conclude the event. Akif?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Good morning to the viewers in India, and good evening to the speakers in US. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Almighty Allah for giving us this opportunity to continue to learn and grow amidst the calamity. I'd also like to thank Mr. Luqman Jukaku for coming forward in arranging the speakers for us, and Mr. Noman Patel for sharing his premier Zoom link. I'd like to thank Beam Pro for connecting us, the students with the alumni, and also the HOD and all the participants who have joined us. Special thanks to Tawab sir for organizing this event and all the volunteers for it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, it's end of this.
We can end the meet. Thanks all, especially the speakers, Mr. Luqman, Adil, Ibrahim, and Imran.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you, Anil.